of discovering your family's passed away from you by doing all of the research. You and your family end up with a beautifully bound heirloom book to view and enjoy. As a longtime genealogist, my staff and I know precisely where to look. We know what to look for and to preserve your story. So consultations with me are always free. Create your family heirloom book for Mother's Day, Father's Day, or next Christmas by talking with me, Dan, at Dancestors Genealogy. So please reach out today by going to our website, www.dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's DANCESTORS genealogy.com, and fill out a contact request, and we'll get right back to you.
How many minutes do we have left to go?
It's starting.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Today we have a great show for you. We have a great show for you today. And here on Live Your True Life Perspectives, we often talk about various things, about psychology. We've talked a lot about cluster B, about borderline personality disorder. We talk about narcissistic personality disorder, and the list goes on. You know, oftentimes we've discussed the dynamic when it comes to couples in romantic relationships. However, we understand that BPD does affect everyone. And today we're going to be discussing the parent-child dynamic. What happens when your child has signs and symptoms of BPD? How to get a grasp on the situation and understanding what is happening and be able to move forward with not only understanding, but being in a powerful position to understand what's happening, to make the best choices, to choose wisely for your child, and to choose wisely for the family dynamic as well. Joining me live on Live Your True Life Perspectives today is Randi Kreger. Randi is the author of Stop Walking on EggShells. Stop Walking on EggShells has sold over 1 million copies, sold in 17 different languages. Randi is an international expert on BPD and how BPD behavior affects the family. Stop Walking on Eggshells for Parents is coming out in 2022, and also there's various other books that Randi is working on. Randi, great to have you live on Live Your True Life Perspectives. How are you doing?
I'm just fine, and I'm eager to share what I know with your listeners.
Great to have you on. And, you know, it's interesting when we've been talking prior to the show, you know, we had discussed and you had, mentioned that, the biggest difference when we're discussing the couple dynamic versus the parent and child dynamic is that in a marriage or in a relationship, you can choose to move on. But when it comes to your child, obviously you can't. So where do we begin? I think that what are some of the signs that you can begin to talk about where your child may be suffering with BPD signs or symptoms?
The first thing I actually want to discuss is the whole subject of can children have BPD, because it's actually a pretty controversial subject. There's only one other book that I know of about this. I'm sorry, two other books that I know of about this. Until recently, the thought was, and a lot of clinicians still believe, that you have to be 18 years or over to be diagnosed with BPD. But what we're finding out now is that the earlier you can treat it, the better outcomes people can have. And so my book, Stop Walking on Eggshells for Parents, which is coming out in February of next year, has a lot of different quotes and important people saying that, yes, this can occur.
And that's very valuable, because I have read many things where people have argued back and forth on that. And you're right. If we can get to the source and we can deal with it at an earlier age, there's a better chance of really not only helping that child, supporting that child, but giving them the tools to be able to succeed.
Yes. So let's talk about the different signs, which you actually asked me about first. One of them is frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. And that kind of comes out in so many things. For example, children think that if they're left, a thought that can be triggered by the loved one being late for a date or not not answering a phone call can lead to some pretty desperate behaviors. And they're really afraid that it's a profound sense that somebody essential to their well-being will absolutely never come back. And this fear of abandonment from your parents or a little girl that you're dating or something like that can lead to really impulsive behavior like cutting yourself or thinking about suicide or even making a suicide attempt. So that frantic effort to avoid real or abandonment can also come from any kind of trigger. It doesn't need to even have to be something so serious. It's just something that appears in their mind. For example, they have a friend and their friend walks through the hall and they don't say hi. Even if the person was deep in thought and just didn't say hi, that will kick in that fear of abandonment. So that's really important.
That abandonment is definitely the driving force behind that behavior, and you're right. It's the way that it's interpreted, and definitely because of what's going through their mind, and the interpretation of that action becomes this huge action to them. Definitely true.
Yes. Another trait is impulsivity in at least two areas that are potentially self-damaging, such as excessive spending, dangerous sexual encounters, substance abuse, reckless driving, and binge eating. So, what all of these things have in common is their pain management behaviors. When they feel pain, and people with BPD feel a lot of pain, they need to do something quickly to feel better. And for example, one parent found out that her child was having sex with men in back alleys that she didn't know. They might take their psychiatric medicine all at one time. They might hook up with older adults that they just met on the internet or elsewhere, or post pictures of themselves naked on social media. So there's a lot of pain management behaviors. That would be a really important second trait.
And the pain management behavior, yes, you're right. It's what they're doing to be able to deal with the pain, deal with that suffering, trying to get away from that, I guess, and try to neutralize that. What's another symptom and sign that we're dealing with children with BPD?
Well, I just wanted to mention that these signs are also in adults. But another one would be inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger, such as frequent displays of temper, constant anger, and recurrent physical fights. This is one of the things that parents and others really have a hard time dealing with, because borderline anger is a whole different animal than regular anger. It's the kind of anger that can leave you frozen because you can't believe that it's happening, or it can make you feel unsafe. And this is something that parents really don't know how to handle, as well as adults. So that would be a really important one.
And definitely, I feel you're right. Definitely these signs and symptoms are definitely across the board. With adults as well at any age. When you're looking at that core, the driving force. Most of the time we look back at that core fear of abandonment, right, Randy?
Yes, and there's another core fear too. Well, it's not a fear exactly, but it's the way they feel about themselves. Somebody with BPD has extremely low self-esteem and they feel worthless and like they shouldn't be taking place in the world. And that leaves them really vulnerable to any kind of criticism. And it's hard when you're a parent to keep in mind that these things are coming from a place of extreme vulnerability and low self-esteem, because somebody yelling at you is one thing and you feel like you need to defend yourself, but you have to remember that the person with BPD is having what you would call a really bad day. They have all the time. And another trait is moodiness, extreme moodiness. Now, that's something that teenagers have all the time, but their moods their moods go really fast from up to down. They may have depression, and the moods usually come from something that's happening in their life. And everything is a disaster. Everything bad that happens is a disaster. A bad grade is a disaster. Uh, Losing a friend is a disaster. And they have absolutely no perspective to look at this and say, well, maybe the pain of this will be over. Their mood can go up and down. It also goes up when good things happen, but then it can plummet down 5 minutes later.
The extremes are going back and forth, and it's interesting because I think that a lot of folks don't realize that, and that definitely the argumentation or the yelling or being upset, but also understanding that they're going from one extreme to another, and it's very emotionally tough on these kids.
Yes, it really is. And it's emotionally tough on the parents. One of the things that I learned when I wrote Stop Walking on Eggshells for Parents is that an abusive relationship is an abusive relationship. And you hate to think of your kid as, being abusive, but they really can be. And parents have a very difficult time because, unlike a partner relationship, as you said earlier, you can't leave your child. And some parents manage to deal with these things. Other parents, just depending upon their own background, when the kid yells at them, "You're the worst mother or father ever," it goes right into their own feelings of low self-worth. And when I was researching the book, 2 different parents were suicidal, and one wanted to kill her daughter as well as herself. So most parents can cope, but the feeling of grief, loss, trauma, and stress on these parents really can't be overestimated.
They're definitely suffering themselves, and it's hard because I bet, especially from a parental standpoint, you get overwhelmed. You don't know if you can take care of it. Probably some frustration. Maybe going to several doctors and not getting the support necessary, and not having the answers that they need.
Yep. The really big problem with kids is that because there's this false belief that you can't treat them until 18, when you go to a therapist and you say, "Hey, my kid is showing all these signs," the therapist might say to you, "Well, we can't diagnose BPD, so let's diagnose bipolar instead." Bipolar is a little bit similar in that they both have moods, but the moods of people with BPD go up and down very, very quickly, where the moods of people with bipolar go, months or even years, but they're very different. And a lot of times, like I said, therapists would rather diagnose a child as bipolar. But the differences, other than the cycles of mood, are that people with BPD are reactive in all emotions: anger, love, whatever. All emotions go up and down. Whereas with bipolar, it's basically either massive depression or mania. So that's another difference. And I only mention this because so many kids are diagnosed with bipolar instead of BPD, and they take the wrong medication.
So true. So true. Randy, when we return, we'll be talking more with Randy Kreger here, talking about more of the signs and symptoms, some treatment options, as well as creating some boundaries and some limitations to help out the dynamic and to become more successful in the family dynamic. So stay tuned. Don't turn the channel. We got a lot more. So Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
You've heard me talking about My Pillow for 3 years, folks. It's the truth. I get the
Are you there?
best sleep of my life with a My Pillow.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
You can
we'll,
do it
have-
too.
How's it going?
We'll have a
60-day
few. Yeah, it's
money back
great.
guarantee, 10-year warranty, made in
great.
the USA. You'll sleep well or you'll get
We'll
your
have a
money
few
back.
minutes,
Go to
and then we'll have a
mypillow.com,
5-minute
click on the
segment.
radio listener special, use my promo code USA, get 2 My Pillow
We have like a
premium
few
pillows
minutes,
for
and
the
then we'll have
price
our
of one, or call
5-minute segment.
1-800-951-8175. Get the best sleep of your life and do it now.
Money, 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 money. You gotta have it. When you need it, what do? If you don't have a rich uncle, call Lending Tree. With us, hundreds of banks compete for your business. So you'll get loans with competitive interest rates, and in some cases, with no closing costs. So here's the deal. If you need money, call us. Do you want to refinance your current loan? Are you 62 or older and interested in a reverse mortgage? Then call Lending Tree now. 800-634-1315. 800-634-1315. We've closed over $250 billion in loans. We know what we're doing and can help you. Call right now for a free quote. 800-634-1315. 800-634-1315. 800-634-1315. That's 800-634-1315. NMLS number 1136.
You've heard me talking about My Pillow for 3 years, folks. It's the truth. I get the best sleep of my life with a My Pillow. You can do it too. 60-day money back guarantee, 10-year warranty, made in the USA. You'll sleep well or you'll get your money back. Go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener special, use my promo code USA, get 2 My Pillow premium pillows for the price of one, or call 1-800-951-8175. Get the best sleep of your life and do it now.
It is interesting to see how the subjects on Ashley's True Life show and current events so
Ashley?
often correlate
Yeah.
with past events.
I
As
want
Ashley
to mention
says,
that I have a
history
Zoom
often
group
repeats itself.
every
Our
Thursday night
ancestors'
for
genealogy
parents.
research
Okay.
comes across great
Let's
stories
do that at the
from the
end.
past that tie to families
Okay.
and our shared history
Or at
regarding
the
what
end of the
happens
third segment,
in
I
our
can bring it
country
up.
and our community. The
Might
ancestors'
be better at
clients
the
have
end of
met
the third
ancestors
segment.
that were colonizers,
Yeah, and I've got an
explorers,
online support
founders of
group too.
religions, gunslingers, kings and queens, knights, pirates, heroic soldiers,
Start talking about the
witches,
fact
and
that
witch
parents
hunters.
need to talk to other
Let's find out who the
parents.
characters are in
That's
your family
absolutely
tree.
essential.
So please
How
reach
many
out
more
today
symptoms and
by
signs do
going
we
to
have
our
left, or did we
website,
cover them?
I think there's more
www.dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's
that, but they're only really, you can't really see them. So the ones that you can really see
and fill out your
are
contact request, and
identity
we'll get
disturbance
right back to you.
and suicidal
Money,
behavior. So just
money,
Okay, so let's do those last two,
money.
and then we'll
You gotta
wrap
have
up
it.
that. And
When
then
you need
we'll
it, what do?
go into,
If you don't have a rich uncle, call Lending
treatment.
Tree. With us, hundreds of
Then we'll
banks
go
compete for
into,
your business.
boundaries
So
and
you'll get
limitations.
loans with competitive interest rates. And in
then
some
support
cases,
group.
with no closing
I think that'll
costs.
be good.
So here's the deal. If you need money, call us. Do you want to refinance your current loan?
I think
Are
we
you
start
62
in
or
about a
older and
minute,
interested in a
so-
reverse mortgage?
And
Then call
this one's
Lending
only
Tree
5
now.
minutes.
800-634-1315. 800-634-1315.
Okay, yeah, we start in
We've
30
closed
seconds.
over $250 billion in loans. We know what we're doing and can help you. Call right now for a free quote. 800-634-1315. 800-634-1315. 800-634-1315. That's 800-634-1315. NMLS number 1136.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We've been talking about dealing with BPD in children and the parent and family dynamic with Randi Kreger. You know, Randi is the author of Stop Walking on Eggshells. You know, Randi, right before the break, we had continued talking about some of the symptoms and signs, and I know we have a couple more to cover of those symptoms and signs in BPD. What are those next two that we want to discuss?
Sure. The next one is identity disturbance, markedly and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. Like all of the traits of BPD, these are common in teenagers in general. So if you're thinking, well, that's every teenager, it's much more intense. It's the difference between a kitchen in your home and a kitchen in an institution where they feed hundreds of people or 1,000. So it's so much more intense for a kid. And with the identity disturbance, their values, morals, and identity seem fluid and changing. And often their sense of self is determined by their identification with a group of friends at that moment. So they hang out with the goths and they're goths. They hang out with the nerds and they're nerds. Whatever, they're different people in different situations, and that's an important one. So that's one. And then the second one is suicidal feelings, ideation, attempts, which are so scary to parents, and cutting or damaging the body in ways, which is also really scary to parents. And those kinds of behaviors often end up bringing the kid into the hospital so they can be safe. Being safe is really a big thing. Being safe from rage, the kids being safe from themselves. So those are the two last ones.
And those are very important to look at. I know that we only have a few minutes left in this segment, but you started kind of talking about options, and when you talk about putting them in the hospital, putting them in a situation like that, is that kind of the last resort, because we don't want to keep them there for very long, right? Is that just to try to stabilize?
Correct. You're trying to stabilize them. And of course, in hospitals today, you have to be a danger to yourself or others, pretty much for any insurance to kick in. But kids go to the hospital often a couple times. The other option is they go to residential treatment centers, which are places that are very strict and you can only go out during certain times. And it's kind of to hold somebody who's being so destructive to the family that you simply can't deal with them. The effects on the family are really important. Everybody in the household, their lives spin around the person with BPD. It's kind of like alcoholism is a family disease and borderline personality disorder is a family disease. So siblings are really, really affected more than we can say, as well as parents.
That's so true. And you're right. And I like how you said that, Randy. It's a family disease. So when we return, we're going to be talking more about this situation. We're going to be talking more about the parent-child dynamic. We'll also be talking more about treatment options. What's out there? Is it DBT? Is it CBT? What are the options that work to help these kiddos out? As well as, Randy's going to be talking more about the structure, how to really create the consistency, because we have to have consistency, we have to have strength, we have to create boundaries, and we have to adhere to these things. Also, don't forget, later on in the hour at the end, I'll be asking Randy her 2 nuggets of wisdom, and some information on a Zoom group and an online support that Randy offers. So stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
I hope you've enjoyed my history and lore tales here on Ashley's True Life Show. I know that there are many more amazing stories in your own family that we can discover in your tree.
We have a little bit of a break.
Hi, I'm Dan from Ancestors Genealogy. We take the hard part of discovering your family's passed away from you by doing all of the research. You and your family end up with a beautifully bound heirloom book to view and enjoy. As a longtime genealogist, my staff and I know precisely where to look.
About 5 minutes.
We know what to look for and to preserve your story. So consultations with me are always free. Create your family heirloom book for Mother's Day, Father's Day, or next Christmas by talking with me, Dan, at Ancestors Genealogy. So please reach out today by going to our website, www.dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's DANCESTORS, genealogy.com, and fill out a contact request, and we'll get right back to you.
Setting and how to create that reality and boundaries.
USA Radio News. I'm Brad Bernards. General Kenneth McKenzie is the commander of U.S. Central Command. He says we are relying on the Taliban for security at the airport in Kabul.
We expect those attacks to continue, and we're doing everything we can to be prepared for those attacks. That includes reaching out to the Taliban, who are actually providing the outer security cordon around the airfield, to make sure they know what we expect them to do to protect us.
Americans on all sides are wondering why we are partnering with the people we've been at war with for 20 years. The investigation into the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic should continue, said Thomas Wright, a senior fellow of foreign policy at Washington-based think tank Brookings Institution, after U.S. intelligence agencies earlier this week delivered an inconclusive assessment on the issue to President Joe Biden. This is USA Radio News.
Rockstar Radio is looking for a co-host. Yes, you heard me correctly. Nationally syndicated radio show and popular podcast. Rockstar Radio with Billy Gerard is looking for a co-host. In fact, 2 segment co-hosts. One will join Billy weekly talking about all things financial, and another for a weekly review of the national real estate and mortgage market. Co-hosting with Billy Gerard could be the move that puts your career into overdrive. For all the details and to schedule an audition with Billy, send an email to bill@rockstar.today. That's bill@rockstar.today. Or go to rockstar.today/co-host for all the details. Rockstar Radio is looking for 2 expert co-hosts. It could be you. Email bill@rockstar.today or go to rockstar.today/co-host. Being on the radio with Billy will make you the expert in the field. It could take your career over the moon. Get all the audition details at rockstar.today/co-host.
I hope you've enjoyed my history and lore tales here on Ashley's True Life Show. I know that there are many more amazing stories in your own family that we can discover in your tree. Hi, I'm Dan from Ancestors Genealogy. We take the hard part of discovering your family's passed away from you by doing all of the research. You and your family end up with a beautifully bound heirloom book to view and enjoy. As a longtime genealogist, my staff and I know precisely where to look. We know what to look for and to preserve your story. So consultations with me are always free. Create your family heirloom book for Mother's Day, Father's Day, or next Christmas by talking with me, Dan, at Ancestors Genealogy. So please reach out today by going to our website, www.dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's DANCESTORS, genealogy.com, and fill out a contact request, and we'll get right back to you.
Hey, travelers, do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call, because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. Our prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip, or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find ridiculously low prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next flight. Guaranteed. Also, save up to 50% off business and first class tickets.
800-871-3291. 800-871-3291. Again, that's 800-871-3291.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We've been talking today about the impact of the parent-child dynamic when you're dealing with a child that has signs and symptoms of borderline personality disorder. Joining me here live is Randi Kreger. Randi is the author of Stop Walking on Eggshells. She has another book coming out in the very beginning of 2022, next year. And Randi and I were just been talking about the signs and symptoms and then some of the treatment options. And so, Randi, when we were talking, we began talking about the extreme situation when someone is needing to have some safety when there's some suicidal ideation, some things like that are happening when they might be, when they could hurt themselves. There's possible residential treatment centers, a hospital. But what are some of the other treatment options that might be able to be helpful when helping these kids to understand why they do what they do, understand their thought process, etc.?
Well, the gold standard of treatment is something called dialectical behavior therapy, which was developed about 10, 15 years ago, but has really become more available. The question about treatment, of course, is it available in your community? If you go to, say, your local therapist and they don't know how to treat BPD, and they certainly don't know how to treat BPD children, it may do more harm than good. So you need to make sure that you find a therapist who is experienced in BPD and who accepts the fact that children can have it. In my book coming out in February, Stop Walking on Eggshells for Parents, I actually included a little page in there for parents to give to their treatment professionals. It's written from one doctor to another. So dialectical behavior therapy was developed to help stop suicidal thoughts and cutting, but it has different modules, and one of the most important modules is called distress tolerance. And what it basically tries to do is once somebody is distressed, moody, etc., instead of doing one of those impulsive pain management behaviors, there's a module on something called distress tolerance. And they're things that people can do, children or adults, when they feel distressed that don't hurt them. For example, there's something called opposite action, which is doing exactly the opposite that you feel like. So if you feel like hiding in bed, the action would be going out and seeing people. Rather than do self-harm, people in dialectical behavior therapy say, hold your hand in a glass of ice water until it hurts, because that's just temporary. So distress tolerance is one of them, and that's one of the most important ones. There's also medications, and the medications don't treat BPD itself, but it treats the symptoms. There's antipsychotic medications, there are antidepressant medications, and there are mood stabilizing medications. So what you need here is a psychiatrist that really understands BPD, even though that's going to be hard to find. And you have to be really careful using medications in children, because usually it hasn't been tested for children. And the medications are used off-label a lot of time, if you know what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it hasn't been tested for them. And keeping an eye on a child is very important when there's medication involved. Being able to see any changes, personality changes, different other changes that might be very important. Let's move into, because I feel that once we understand kind of what we're dealing with, and it's hard enough to raise a child, right? It's hard. Parenting is not an easy job. But I've realized that when you're dealing with this situation, and any children for that matter, but really with this situation, we need to have consistency. We need to create limitations. We need to create boundaries. So how do we begin to do that, Randy, when we're trying to, lower the outbursts, when we're trying to be able to communicate that sort of thing with the children?
Well, the number one thing to remember about boundaries is that they're not about controlling somebody else's behavior. That may be counterintuitive, but we can't control other people. What we can control is ourselves. And we have to decide first, all right, what if my kid rages? What am I going to do? What am I going to do if this happens? What am I going to do if that happens? And then you basically sit down and have a talk with the child, because most likely you haven't had boundaries. So you need to tell them, things are changing. And you think about what it is that you give your kid that you can take away. And often, for example, that's a cell phone, or any kind of time on social media. So you come up with a boundary and you explain it to the child and you say, if this happens, if you rage, or if you yell, I'm going to leave the room. If you threaten suicide, I'm going to call the paramedics. Because a lot of times people will threaten suicide when they're trying to get what they want, and they know that if they do that, the parent will give in. So you have to follow through consistently every single time. So when you're thinking about, okay, if the kid doesn't do this, what am I going to do? You have to be willing to go through and do those things. Otherwise, boundaries do more harm than good. And the big other thing to remember about boundaries is when your kid adheres to them, you need to reward them by saying something, by body language, even different things. If your boundary is an hour of homework every night, when they do it, you can take them out to Dave and Buster's or whatever it is that you like. But structure and boundaries you have to remember that once you set them, the kid is going to do what's called counter moves. And that is, are you really serious or are you not? And they will up the ante. If you set a boundary about rage, then they'll rage even more. And the whole key to setting boundaries, in addition, besides rewarding and when they do it right, is going through that period of counter moves on blind faith that it will work once you keep sticking to it and you provide that consistency and structure for kids that they really so desperately need.
It's interesting, Randy, because when I'm working with folks, in the romantic relationship department, as far as in marriage and relationships, that's one of the biggest things is consistency. And, most of the time in these relationships, we don't have any boundaries. We don't have any limitations. We haven't been consistent. And you hear folks say, wow, it's painful, that they rage or they did this or that. And it's like, you're going to have to jump the hump. There's going to be a time where you're going to want to quit this. You're going to want to quit this structure. You're going to want to quit these boundaries. But the longer you do it, the more consistency you have, the better it is. Because across the board, what I've seen is that, folks that have these signs and symptoms, one of the things that they need is consistency. To me, I think consistency creates a security type feeling, but it's also, they realize that, hey, if I do this, this is what's going to happen. And I think that's very powerful. Even if you feel like, oh gosh, I can't keep doing it. It's like you really, at that point in time, definitely have to stick with those boundaries.
Well, the thing about parents that makes it really hard for them to stick to it is they just don't want to enrage the kid, or in other words, don't poke the bear. There is a punishment for setting boundaries, and that is the kid acting out. And it's not easy. A lot of parents go for the easier thing, which is to give them what they want. So it's a little, you really have to convince parents that it's an absolutely important thing to do. Because if you give in to the child, they're going to not learn. And the child wants parents to do things for them and to be really involved in helping them because it makes them feel like they're still loved. So when you try to push your child to be a little bit more independent, they see that as, you don't love me anymore. And so the other thing that parents do is they'll just do things for the kid that they should be old enough to do for themselves. They're going to have a hard time to do things for themselves because they're so involved with their feelings when other teens are learning to get jobs and drive cars and do all that stuff. So the parent, and I explained this really well in Stop Walking on Eggshells for Parents coming out in February, you really have to try hard to get your kid to be independent, because if you don't, once they graduate from high school, they're not going to want to move out. And there are some kids who stay at home until they're in their 30s.
Mhm.
And it's real easy for parents to be codependent and allow that to happen, but you really can't let it happen.
That is so true. It's like if you don't allow them the independence to do things, and I've worked with folks that, well, we do this, we do that for them, and it's like, well, at some point in time, if we don't allow them to be independent in nature to some degree, they're never going to learn this, even though they might be upset initially. It's about helping them get the tools to be able to become an adult. And you're right, there are kids that live at home in 30s, even 40s.
Yes.
Mhm. And it's critical.
Yes. I just want to talk about something else that's really critical. How many minutes do we have left?
Oh, yeah, we're good. We have about 4 minutes left in
Okay.
the segment.
One thing that parents really need to learn is a concept called validation. And it doesn't mean that you're telling the kids that what they're doing is valid. The valid in it doesn't count, but validation is going to be your primary mode to talking to your child. And what validation is you acknowledge the feelings that the kid has, and you accept those feelings as being part of their experience, rather than say, well, you shouldn't feel mad about this, you shouldn't feel upset about this. That is exactly the wrong thing to do. Validation is taking all of your energy, putting down your phone, sitting down with them or standing or wherever they are, and you say, and you tackle their emotions, which is one word. You seem like you feel confused. It seems like you feel angry. Seems like you feel whatever. And the kid just thrives on being told that you understand their feelings, you see what they're going through, and you never say you never say something like you shouldn't feel that way, even if the situation seems like it. So let's say there's no movie tickets left for the latest flick, and your kid goes into a meltdown. You don't say, "Hey, this isn't a big deal." What you say is, boy, you really sound really upset about that. And you let the kid talk, and you keep on validating them. So that is your main communication method of talking to the kid. And it's difficult to explain on the phone. So what I would suggest to everybody is that they simply Google the word validation, and maybe using the letters DBT, which stands for Dialectical Behavior Therapy, and practice. First, practice on people who aren't your kid, and then, get to the point where it's second nature.
Randy, real quick, I was going to ask you, I know that you said that you have a Zoom group and a support group for parents. Where would
Yes.
people find that information?
Well, it comes from my online support group, Moving Forward. And it's mainly for members of Moving Forward. But it starts on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. And in order to get the mailings about this, you join Moving Forward from my website, which is called stopwalkingoneggShells.com. You join the group, and then every Monday we send out the schedules. We have 4 Zoom groups a week, not just the ones on Thursday nights, but we have them on Tuesday nights for parents if they want to join. We have them on Saturday afternoons at 2 Central and 3 Eastern for partners. And then we have one on Sunday nights for women actually, who have a mother with BPD. So we've got lots and lots of Zoom opportunities.
Mhm.
People, like the last group, there were like 14 people there. And you're listened to and heard, and you'll hear that other people have the exact same story.
That's awesome. We'll be back, so stay tuned. Randy will be back with a couple of nuggets of wisdom, and I'll be closing out the show with some sort of nugget of wisdom that I'll provide as well. So stay tuned because we got more up. We still have more to come, so don't change the channel. Don't change the dial. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. Be back this time in 2 shakes.
I hope you've enjoyed my history and lore tales here on Ashley's True Life Show. I know
Okay,
that
we
there are
have a
many
3-minute
more amazing stories in your own family that we can discover in your tree. Hi, I'm Dan from Dancestors Genealogy. We take the hard part of discovering your family's passed away from you by doing all of the research. You and your family end up with a beautifully bound heirloom book to view and enjoy. As a longtime genealogist, my staff and I know precisely where to look. We know what to look for and to preserve your story. So consultations with me are always free. Create your family heirloom book for Mother's Day, Father's Day, or next Christmas by talking with me, Dan, at Dancestors Genealogy. So please reach out today by going to our website, www.dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's DANCESTORS genealogy.com, and fill out a contact request, and we'll get right back to you.
You've heard me talking about My Pillow for 3 years, folks. It's the truth. I get the best sleep of my life with a My Pillow. You can do it too. 60-day money-back guarantee, 10-year warranty, made in the USA. You'll sleep well or you'll get your money back. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener special, use my promo code USA, get 2 MyPillow premium pillows for the price of one, or call 1-800-951-8175. Get the best sleep of your life and do it now. You've heard me talking about My Pillow for 3 years, folks. It's the truth. I get the best sleep of my life with a My Pillow. You can do it too. 60-day money-back guarantee, 10-year warranty, made in the USA. You'll sleep well or you'll get your money back. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener special, use my promo code USA, get 2 MyPillow premium pillows for the price of one, or call 1-800-951-8175. Get the best sleep of your life and do it now.
It is interesting to see how the subjects on Ashley's True Life show and current events so often correlate with past events. As Ashley says, history often repeats itself.
Yeah, that's great.
Our Dancestors genealogy research comes across great stories from the past that tie to families and our shared history regarding what happens in our country and our community. Dancestors clients have had ancestors that were colonizers, explorers, founders of religions, gunslingers, kings and queens, knights, pirates, heroic soldiers, witches, and witch hunters. Let's find out who the characters are in your family tree. So please reach out today by going to our website, www.dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's DANCESTORS genealogy.com, and fill out a contact request, and we'll get right back to you.
You're going
It's
to do
starting.
my website, right?
It's starting.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been exploring BPD signs, symptoms, treatment options, limitations, boundary creation when it comes to the parent-child dynamic. Randi Kreger has been joining me here live on Live Your True Life Perspectives. And if you've been watching and listening to the shows throughout the last, 10 years, you know that I have a tendency of asking folks, just a couple of kind of like words of wisdom, nuggets of thought, nuggets of wisdom. And so, Randi, it's time to be on the hot seat. What are a couple of things that you would like to share, important things that you want to share with our listeners before the end of the show today?
Sure. The number one is whether you're a parent or a partner is self-care. People can run themselves ragged, about the borderline person, but they need to relax and they need to deal with 3 particular emotions: trauma, because there's a lot of trauma that you feel, stress, which is self-explanatory, and grief. There's a lot of grief that your child won't ever do the things that other kids do, or they won't be quote unquote normal. And Mindfulness meditation is really great. Spending time with other people because parents tend to self-isolate. So that self-care is extremely important. And the next thing I would really talk about are siblings. Siblings of the borderline kid get overlooked, and the siblings get all the abuse without any perspective of how to deal with it. And they're ignored by the parents a lot because the other kid gets so much attention. So you have to be very cognizant of the abuse that the sibling is under. You have to carve out time to spend with the sibling. A lot of time the siblings, like a birthday party or events that focus on them, are ruined by the person with BPD. And I can't tell you how many adults come to me still terrified of their borderline siblings. And the third thing I'd say is something called radical acceptance, which is best Googled because I can't explain the whole thing. But instead of thinking about changing your child, you need to accept that they are the way that they are and go from there.
Powerful stuff, powerful. Randi, where can we find you on the web?
Sure, stopwalkingoneggShells.com. I just redid my website, and unlike a lot of websites that don't have very much information, I've got scads and scads of information for parents, partners, adult children, siblings. You can read about siblings there. And of course, we've gone through all this stuff so fast. I would really encourage people to go to stopwalkingoneggShells.com. I also want to mention I have another book called The Essential Family Guide to Borderline Personality Disorder. I would really recommend that book, even over Stop Walking on Eggshells, The Essential Family Guide to Borderline Personality Disorder.
Randi, it's been great having you on. I look forward to our live show next Thursday. Thank you so much for coming live on the radio today.
You're welcome.
Great, amazing. Randi's awesome. So for everybody that's listening, thank you so much for tuning in. I think that this is very powerful information, and many of you are going through this right now. You're dealing with it in a family dynamic, and having answers and understanding is powerful. That's where we get that knowledge. That's where we get the wisdom. And that's when we come out of that area of not knowing, not understanding, and actually having that aha moment and begin to realize, okay, what is the pathway that I'm going to take to create lasting change? What is the pathway that I'm going to create to make the life better for the folks in the family, for myself, and for the rest of the dynamic? And this is powerful. So I hope that everybody's enjoyed the show. Please share it with your family and friends. Also, don't forget, every week we put up new video content on YouTube. And also you can go to the website, Ashley Burgess, BERGES.com. And in the meantime, just remembering, it's all about how we can create knowledge, understanding, be able to step back and ask those questions, understand, be able to connect, asking about feelings, allowing someone to feel the way they feel, listening, having that interaction. A lot of times, many of us grew up in realities where you weren't allowed to feel that way, or your feelings, you were made fun of for having certain feelings. And so we want to make sure that we create the proper, positive, healthy family dynamic in any situation, but also doing what's right for others as well as doing what's right for us. Next, on live on YouTube on Thursday of this coming week. Next Thursday, we'll be live on YouTube and social media discussing BPD and the couples dynamic in that situation. So stay tuned. That'll be fun, and Randi will be there as well. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes. Great job. Thanks for coming on. You were awesome.
It is interesting to see how the subjects on Ashley's True Life show
I'm actually going
events
to click off the live feed in just 1 second. Do you want me to call you right back?
History often repeats itself. Our ancestors' genealogy research comes across great stories from the past that tie to families and our shared history regarding what happens in our country and our community.
Awesome. Great job. And then I'll just call you for Thursday, and we can talk before Thursday if you want.
Founders of religions, gunslingers, kings and queens, knights, pirates, heroic soldiers, witches, and witch hunters. Let's find
Yeah,
out
the
who the
podcast will
characters
have no
are in
commercials.
your family tree. So please reach out today
The total
by going
time that
to
was
our
on the radio
website,
was like 42 minutes.
www.dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's
Thursday, no commercials. It's about 1 hour.
Genealogy.
So we usually do about a
and fill out a
15-minute
contact
50
request, and we'll get right back to you.
show, because we don't have any limitations like we do on the radio. Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Well, take care. Have a great afternoon. Great work. Bye. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate everybody tuning in that's listened to the radio show today. Randi was live, and I thought that was really fun to have her on. She will be on Thursday, this coming Thursday. We'll be going about 50 minutes live, talking about actually the romantic family, the romantic dynamic, the couple's dynamic when you're dealing
as a place to start over in life. That is our
bit, and it's something that I've done a lot of videos on, a lot of content, and and that's when Randi came to me. She's actually working on another book, and so that's how we kind of started our dialogue, which is really neat because she's going to actually quote some of my work in her book. And her new book coming up, which I'm really looking forward to. But it's interesting because when we look at this concept of understanding the person that has BPD, I think that there's more to it than just that, right? There's also the concept of when we can understand where they're coming from, we begin to understand where we're coming from. We also begin to understand our triggers. And if we can actually go within to find those triggers and understand why we're being triggered in that situation, not only are we looking to understand the other person, but we're also being able to understand ourselves. And I think it's a very powerful place to be. I don't find it painful. It's only painful when we don't understand. It's only painful when we acquiesce. It's only painful when we don't do what we need to do for ourselves. It's only painful when we don't create the right proper boundaries or limitations that are necessary. So I think that, when the more we awaken to our truth and the more we awaken to the truth around us and understand where other people are coming from and what they're dealing with, the more valuable the situation is and the more understanding that we have. I'm going to also, Randi had let me know that she can also, you can also pre-order her book, Stop Walking on Eggshells for Parents, on her website, stopwalkingoneggshells.com. So I will go on and put that in the comment section here. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody tuning in. Let me go through here. Alice Moon, thank you so much for tuning in. Jerry Harvin, great to see you. How are you doing? Al, great to see you. How are you doing? Caleb, how are you doing? Is it possible for someone to have BPD? I think so. We're going to be talking more about that on Thursday for sure. I normally think that there's one or the other, and sometimes I feel like there's a misdiagnosis there, Caleb. Renee, great to see you. How are you doing? CK, thank you for this. Glad to have you. Can't wait to see you here next week. EG, great to see you. How are you doing? And I have some videos, EG, on the petulant BPD as well. And yes, I believe that, somebody can have signs and symptoms of BPD as well as signs and symptoms of NPD. There can be an overlap there. And so that's very important to recognize. And I'm glad that you brought that up, EG, because that's important because we have to recognize that as well. Zen and me, great to see you. How are you doing? I'm glad that you're here. Johnny, Salty Air Crab Cake, great to see you. How are you doing? I'm glad that you've joined us. And I'm glad that you've checked out some of the videos. I really appreciate that. CK, yeah, how to supportively tell your partner you think they have BPD when you're fearful of what they will respond. And that's a that's a big challenge, telling somebody something and saying that you don't know how they're going to respond. You want to do it in a safe way. You want to do it in not a, you are this kind of way. It needs to be like, hey, maybe I've run across some of these videos trying to find, I do have some videos that are probably more directed towards somebody that has been dealing with the stress and anxiety of this, but I also have videos where you could, that are kind of calming and, hey, these are just some of the signs and symptoms. These are some of, the issues that, folks are going through that might have this, kind of coming from a standpoint of, I've been doing my research and I think I want to bring this up. I've been doing my research and I think that this might be something that needs to be discussed. And I think if you say, it's not like I know that you're this, it's more like, hey, I've been looking at some of these videos, I've been reading some of these books, maybe this might be helpful for you. And that can be helpful. It has to be introduced. It has to be introduced in the proper way. Definitely. And that's what's important. Self-help champion, great to see you. And I'm glad that, her book has helped you. That's so powerful. Johnny Salty Air Crab Cake, I appreciate you. Thank you. Yes, I'm glad that you're sticking here. So thank you. And I will see you later next week for sure. And yes, and Khalib, yeah, and jumping from relationship quickly, is that something that is a BPD thing? That is a symptom. That is something that happens because of the fear of abandonment, the fear of being alone. When they leave one relationship, they jump to another a lot of times, so that they don't have that feeling, so they don't have to deal with that. Maybe even if the relationship is not necessarily something that they necessarily want to be in, they still have somebody that's there. Very good question. So, I think that I'm going to go on and put that in the information. If you don't mind adding that, George, that would be great. That website, if you want to. But it's powerful stuff, because one of the things that I found is that the children dynamic, the parent-child dynamic, and the spousal dynamic, yes, are they quite different? Sure. But, when you're dealing with the signs and symptoms of BPD in anybody, the way that we have to deal with it is very similar on every level. There is no change. It's just because somebody's 50 and somebody's, 18 or somebody's whatever, it doesn't matter. It's understanding that, but also it's also realizing, okay, a lot of times in these relationships, whether it's, an offspring or whether it's a husband or wife, we've allowed people to continue to do what they want to do without any sort of boundaries or limitations. And in that process, we have a tendency of losing ourselves. We also don't create a healthy environment for that other person, because we have to have structure. And I've realized that folks that have these signs and symptoms need structure no matter what their age. And a lot of us need structure no matter what, right? Many of us like structure. It helps us. So it's like being able to have that and stepping back and saying, how often have I allowed someone to walk all over my boundaries? How often have I allowed somebody to do that? But I think it's powerful to be able to step back and say, okay, I need to create my own values and my own ethics and my boundaries across the board. It's not just with somebody that might have signs and symptoms of BPD. This is across the board with every family member, every friend, because we have to be a solid individual, right? And so when we're working on this and we're dealing with this, we have to, first of all, we need to take that work and that introspection and really focus on ourselves and say, what is it that I can do to really begin to understand myself? And I've done videos on understanding values, of understanding ourselves, of spending that time with ourselves, of understanding how we would define ourselves, the boundary proposition. And so those are the things that are important. And as we keep working on that, understanding what we stand for on a daily basis. So, for example, one of the values that I hold dear is independent thought and independent action. I don't want somebody to tell me what I should or should not do. I don't want somebody to tell me how I should or should not feel. Okay, so that's one of my big values. And when somebody tries to jump that hump, jump over that boundary, right then and there, no matter who it is, I'm going to have to say something, okay? Because that's a boundary. It doesn't matter if it's with somebody I'm working with. It doesn't matter if it's a family member. It doesn't matter if it's a friend, right? It doesn't matter if it's a sibling. It doesn't matter. And so once we begin to articulate that in a powerful way, we're able to understand ourselves better. And that goes a long way too. So if you're dealing with a family member or a friend or a spouse that may have signs and symptoms of BPD or even NPD for this matter, you creating these values and understanding what the values mean to you and create boundaries based on that not only helps you, but it also helps them understand where they stand. And so, I mean, that's very powerful. Rhonda, great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Khalib, thank you so much. I really appreciate you too. And thank you. That means a lot to me. And I feel like once we continue to create that, not only do we grow, not only do we become more solid, we also have a stronger identity. And that's very powerful. So thank y'all so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week on Thursday for the live show. We might do something in between now and then as well. I don't know yet. We also have a video coming out on gray rocking. That video will be out here in the next few days. We'll be talking about gray rocking. So powerful stuff. what gray rocking is, how to gray rock properly. This is a technique that's used very well, especially when you're dealing with narcissists or narcissistic abuse. Very powerful stuff. So remember that definitely, because this is a technique that you can use that really, really works very well. I explained the technique in the video, and it becomes powerful. So I think that this will be something that you can use to create the boundaries, to be able to look at the situation properly, and to only be able to give the information that you want at that time and give the information that's necessary. Because when we give too much information, in the situation, we have a tendency of somebody being able to use that information, use it as forever ammunition later on, be able to use it against us, manipulate us, or gaslight us with that information. And so basically, gray rocking is a way of creating personal defense boundaries, but also only giving the information that you want at the time to that specific person. Some people you can offer this information to, you can tell them honestly and truthfully how you're feeling. Other people you can't. And so for those folks that you don't feel comfortable, for those folks, Caleb, thank you for letting me. I didn't know. Caleb, great. I appreciate you. Yeah, I sometimes I don't always pronounce names right. So I really appreciate you saying that, because I didn't want to butcher your name. So I appreciate that. But yeah, looking at the gray rocking situation and being able to look at that, understand it, and use how to use the concept is powerful. So that video will come out in the next few days. Caleb, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate all of you for tuning in. Thank you so much. If you have any questions or thoughts, or you want to reach out to me, just go to ashleyburgess.com, click on that contact page. You can send me an email. Just remember that the email you put in there, you need to be able to get emails from it. Sometimes I get emails and I try to respond back, but the email was entered in wrong, and so I can't get back. So that's not good. And I want to be able to reach out, and I want to make sure that you see that I have reached out. So that's something that's important to me, because if you're emailing me, I want you to realize that you're going to get an email back. So also, if you'd like to work with me, let me know as well, and you can message me there. You can go to ashleyburgess.com either way. Thank you, George. That was good. George put in the website. So Joseph, great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. Long time no see. Maria, I'm so glad that you tuned in. Thank you so much. The podcast will be up here in the next few days. We'll cut out all the commercials. We'll have that podcast up. And the gray rocking video will come up, I think, Monday or Tuesday. Probably Monday, maybe Tuesday. It depends. And in the meantime, if y'all have any other ideas and some thoughts that you have on subject matter that you would like me to discuss, please reach out to me, and we will go from there, and we will discuss those topics, because it's important that the topics that we discuss is what you would like to talk about, but also, knowledge is power. The more that we can connect in a positive way, the more that we can connect together and talk about real solutions, the more powerful that we are. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you so much. You can watch this show. If you missed it, you can rewatch it. It'll be on, and you're awesome. Don't forget to live your true life. And if you have any ideas, just let me know. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great morning, evening, afternoon, night, wherever you are around the globe, around the planet. And let me know if you need anything. Definitely reach out. Don't hesitate. And we'll be back live next week. And looking forward to seeing y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great one. Take care, guys. Bye.